You know it doesn't work. You've seen it backfire. You've walked away from a conversation feeling smaller than when you entered it because you spent 10 minutes justifying a decision that was already made, and you still do it.
That gap between knowing and doing is exactly where this episode lives.
By lesson 3, you'll have the one sentence that stops it cold, and by the end, you'll know what it feels like to stop performing. Here's what I used to tell myself. I just want to be clear, like the explanation was a courtesy, like I was doing them a favor.
Clarity is one sentence. Everything after that isn't clarity. It's negotiation. You're not informing them. You're lobbying for a verdict.
But isn't that just wanting to be understood?
Understanding and agreement are not the same thing. You want them to understand. That takes one sentence. What you're actually after is agreement, and agreement feels like safety. That loop, the reach for safety through other people's approval, is not always courtesy. It can become a dependence on external approval.
And like any hunger, it needs feeding.
Every time, which means every explanation that lands well trains you to reach for the next one, and every explanation that doesn't trains you to try harder.
I made a decision, told my team it was final, and then I explained it for about 4 minutes. By the end of it, someone asked a question that wouldn't have existed if I just stopped after the first sentence. And I remember thinking, how did a closed door just reopen?
You reopened it, not them.
I know, I felt it happen.
Every explanation attached to a final decision sends one signal. This is still in review. You didn't inform them. You invited a second opinion you didn't ask for. And here's what makes it a bleed rather than a single loss. The room remembers. Next decision, they wait for the explanation. Because last time, the explanation meant the floor was still open. You trained them.
So it's not just one conversation, it's the pattern the conversation sets.
Authority isn't taken from you in those moments. It drains, quietly, one explanation at a time.
The Stoics had a name for the exit from that drain, and it's not what most people expect.
In the 33rd chapter of the Enchiridion, Epictetus's manual, not a treatise, a manual for the ordinary day, he gives a specific instruction, not a principle, an instruction for exactly this situation. Someone tells you that a person has been speaking ill of you. The natural move is defense, correction, explanation. Epictetus says, do none of those things. In Thomas Wentworth Higginson's English translation, the passage reads, if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, or he would not have mentioned these alone. Read that again slowly in your head. That response is not humility. It is not self-deprecation. It is the complete removal of the other person's verdict from the jurisdiction of your self-assessment. He is not saying, you're right, I'm worse than you think. One way to read Epictetus here is this. Your opinion of me does not locate me. I already know what I am. Your partial view changes nothing.
But what if the misread has actual consequences professionally with someone whose opinion carries weight?
Then you give one sentence of correction. Because that is information. It serves a practical purpose. What you do not do is add the second sentence, or the third. The moment you cross from information into justification, you have handed them the verdict again. You've told them, your judgment of me is a jurisdiction I recognize.
So the sentence that stops it, it's not a comeback, it's a location.
Correct. It tells you where you stand, not relative to their opinion, but relative to your own standard. That is what Epictetus is pointing at. Not silence as a tactic, silence as evidence that you no longer need the room to confirm what you already know.
But silence isn't always the right move. How do you know the difference? I have to be straight about something because I've used I don't need to explain myself as a shield. There was a conversation I owed someone, a real one, and I told myself I was being stoic. I wasn't. I was avoiding the cost of the conversation.
That's the line worth drawing, because the behavior looks identical from the outside. The man who is silent from strength and the man who is silent from avoidance. Same posture, same words, different origin.
So how do you tell them apart from the inside?
2 questions. First, are you silent because the other person's verdict no longer governs you, or because you're afraid of what the conversation might cost? Second, would you make the same choice if they were watching, or only because they're not? Avoidance needs the absence of the other person to function. Strength doesn't require their absence. It doesn't require their presence either. It operates the same either way.
So it's not about what you say or don't say, it's about what's running the decision.
As a practical diagnostic, not a psychological rule, try this. 1 sentence is information. 2 sentences is clarification. 3 sentences is performance. Count yours. Not as a rule, but as a diagnostic. The number tells you which one is running.
That's a hard count to take, honestly.
It is, which is why most men don't take it. They feel the 3rd sentence coming and they let it go. Because stopping mid-explanation feels like losing. It isn't. It's the first sign you're back in your own column.
Which brings us to the signs. All of them. Lesson 5.
There are 5 things that change when a man stops needing the room's verdict. Not 5 things he decides to do. 5 things that simply stop requiring effort, because the question underneath them has been settled. First, he stops pre-explaining. You know what pre-explaining is. It's the sentence before the sentence. I know this might sound strange, or, just to be clear, I'm not saying. That prefix often serves one purpose: to manage the other person's reaction before they've had it. When the verdict no longer governs you, the prefix disappears. The sentence starts where it should start. Second, he stops overqualifying his decisions. Not all qualification is weakness. Precision requires qualification. But there is a kind of qualification that is not precision. It is insurance. I think, and I could be wrong, but maybe. That is not humility. That is a man distributing responsibility before the outcome arrives.
Preloading the apology.
Exactly. Third, he stops replaying conversations. Not because he no longer cares about the outcome, but because often the replay isn't really about the outcome. It is about the verdict. Did they think less of me? Did I lose ground? When the standard is internal, the replay has no function. It ends. Fourth, he stops needing the last word. The last word is the most expensive real estate in any conversation. Men spend enormous energy acquiring it, and it purchases nothing. The man who has settled the question underneath doesn't need the conversation to end on his note. He can let it end on theirs. That is not concession. That is the absence of a need that was costing him.
That one lands differently. I think most men don't even notice they're doing it.
They don't. Because it feels like principle. I'm standing my ground. but the ground was never in the conversation. Fifth, and this is the one that takes the longest, he stops performing competence for people who already know he's competent. The explanation given to the person who didn't ask. The credential dropped into a room that wasn't questioning it. That is not confidence. That is the phantom audience. Still running, still requiring proof, long after the room stopped watching. Marcus Aurelius makes the point in Book 10 of the Meditations that we should stop debating what a good person ought to be and focus on becoming one. He is not describing a destination. He is describing the end of a particular argument, the internal one, the one that keeps asking, am I enough? Did they see it? Did it land? When that argument stops, the 5 markers stop being work. They become the natural shape of how you move.
So the sentence that stops it, it's not something you say to them, it's something you stop saying to yourself.
That's the whole thing.
3 things. This week, not a system, just 3 points of contact with what we covered.
First, the sentence count. Next time you explain a decision, count. 1 sentence, information. 2, clarification. 3, ask yourself what's running. You don't have to stop at 1, but know which sentence you're on. Second, the prefix audit. For 3 days, notice every time you open with, I know this might sound, or just so you know I'm not trying to, or filler words like honestly. Don't correct it yet, just notice it. The noticing is the first move. You cannot change what you haven't seen.
That one alone will be uncomfortable.
Third, the 2 questions from Lesson 4. When you choose silence, or when you choose to speak, run them. Am I doing this because their verdict no longer governs me, or because I'm afraid of the cost? And would I make the same call if they were watching? Not every day. Just when the moment arrives, and it will arrive.
None of these are easy, but none of them require a new version of you. They require you to see clearly what the current version is already doing.
That's enough for this week.
In the next episode, we go 1 layer deeper because everything we covered today assumes you already know what your standard is. But what if you don't? What if the reason the room's verdict still governs you is that you haven't built one of your own yet?
That's the question most men skip, because answering it requires something harder than discipline. It requires honesty about what you actually value, not what you've been told to value.
Episode 11 will be here.